Well, here we are going into another new year. We are saying goodbye to 2024 and heading into 2025. And I wanted to share with you a couple predictions that I have about what it means to be an executive in 2025 and beyond. So stick around. Let's talk through my predictions for 2025. Welcome to the channel. My name is Tom, and I'm the founder of BLEAK, where we help good people become great leaders. We do this in a lot of ways. Our primary program is called the Executive Career Accelerator. It helps mid-career professionals move to the executive ranks. You'll learn more about that. There's a link down in the description to tell you more about how that program works. But today, what I want to talk about specifically is my predictions for 2025 in terms of what it means for the executive ranks or people wanting to move up to the executive level. So 2025 is going to be a pretty interesting year from my perspective. We just had a major election here in the United States, and there's a new administration or an old administration, depending on how you want to think about it. It's coming into power. And a lot of things that have been a certain way for the last 4 years, they're all going to change. And what I'm seeing and hearing is there's going to be some pretty radical change to how things are done in terms of global trade. So my first prediction for 2025 is that we are almost certainly going to go into a global recession, if not depression. And here's why. First of all, the new administration has talked about raising tariffs on imported goods from around the world, raising tariffs on goods from Mexico, from Canada, from China, from Europe. And these tariffs are going to do significant damage to the marketplace. So the United States is one of the largest consumer markets in the world. And when the cost of food goes up 10% because of a tariff, when the cost of everything on Amazon and Temu goes up 10%, well, that's probably meaning 10% less things are going to be purchased. And that's a pretty big dent in the global market. So these tariffs and these trade wars that the new administration is talking about probably is going to lead to a recession or a decline in revenues and profitability for organizations around the world. Global organizations will almost certainly respond to this by reducing headcount. So I think you can see a spike in layoffs is coming. And the way that companies are laying off people is not how they used to do it. They used to say, hey, there's going to be a layoff if you're on the list. Sorry. I think you're going to see significant changes to the work environment. For example, companies using RTO, return to office mandates, to reduce their headcount because they hired a bunch of people who live in places nowhere near an office. And by saying, okay, well, everyone has to come into the office now, well, that is definitely going to push away everybody who hasn't the ability to go into the office. And so it's kind of a quiet way of laying people off. I think you're going to see a lot more stuff like that. You're going to see demotions. You're going to see reductions in pay. You're going to see things that kind of drive people away as opposed to just an outright layoff. So companies are starting to brace for these changes, these trade wars, these tariffs, the things like that, these economic changes in just general policy globally, as well as in the United States. And I think what we're going to see is after the inauguration, you're going to see a slowdown in hiring happening. And as soon as those tariffs, if they actually happen, when they hit, there'll be a massive economic shift. It will be difficult. And almost certainly companies will lay people off because of that. So you need to be ready for anything going into 2025. You need to be prepared to be in a role that you're comfortable in, but also be prepared in case that role disappears underneath of your feet. The second trend that I see really accelerating in 2025 is watching AI continue to replace task work done by humans. AI is a tool that executives love. And if you think about it, it makes sense. AIs don't complain. They don't need food. They don't need money. They just need bandwidth and power. So AIs will just do what they're told. Now, let's be honest, AI is not able to replace human ingenuity and inventiveness and creativity and communication, but it's getting pretty good. And for a lot of executives, there is a lot of testing being done to see what's good enough, right? Like, how good can an AI get? And is that good enough to replace humans? If not all of the humans, at least some of the humans. And here, I want to be really careful because I think, quite honestly, the trend in 2025 is that AI is not going to replace your job. Someone who knows how to use AI is going to replace your job. That's what I think is going to happen. I think it's vitally important for executives and leaders to learn how to use these AI tools. And I'm not just talking about ChatGPT, I'm talking about a whole bunch of other language models that are out there that allow us to do all kinds of interesting and creative things using AI to help augment our understanding of the information and data around us. If you know how to use and leverage AI in your role, you're probably going to be more valuable than someone who can't or doesn't. And so keep that in mind. And AI will eat the world, but not in the way that you think. The people who know how to use AI will replace the ones who don't. And if you're looking for an analogy here, go back to the early 1990s when computers started to become a real thing in the workforce. They replaced the typewriter pool, right? We used to have these things called stenographer pools where you would dictate a memo on audio and then someone in a room full of typewriters would type that out. That all got replaced in the 80s with personal computers. And by the 90s, if you as an executive did not know how to use a PC, if you did not know how to write an email, if you didn't know how to log on to the internet, you were replaced by someone who could. And very quickly, within a decade, everyone was online, whether they wanted to be or not. And so I think we're going in the same direction here with AI in 2025. I think the big change in 25 will be that as companies try to reduce costs, they will lean more and more heavily on AI. And so they will bias towards keeping the people who know how to use AI and letting go of the ones who don't. And my third prediction for 2025 is one that I didn't see coming, quite honestly, in 2022, 23 timeframe. But all through this year, I see this as an absolute trend. And that trend is that we're going to see more and more W-2 or full-time employee roles replaced by contractor roles or 1099 roles. And the contractors, and I'm talking about roles at the executive level. I'm talking about companies moving towards this idea of fractional executive leadership. So a fractional executive is someone who does the job of, say, like VP of marketing or chief financial officer or CTO, even chief technology officer, someone who does those jobs, but for multiple companies. A lot of companies have learned that they don't need a full-time chief marketing officer. They just need someone to come in for 4 hours a week and kind of oversee the marketing team and make sure that the strategy is going in the right direction. So they don't hire a full-time CMO, they hire the time of a fractional CMO. And I think you're going to see more and more of that in 2025. And if you think about it, it kind of makes sense that this is happening because companies don't want to invest more in labor. Let's face it, the reality is that we're now under 4 years average tenure in employment in the United States. In 2024, January 2024, the government put out a report that said that the average tenure of an employee is 3.9 years. That used to be 15 years back in the late 70s, early 80s. Somebody would stay at a job for 15 years. If you stayed at a job for 4 years back then, you were seen as a job hopper. If you stay for a job at 4 years, you're above the mean in average time in a role. And so everything is becoming far more transactional. Companies are losing all of this gained knowledge, this tribal knowledge that they've had in the people in their companies. And instead, what they're doing is they're writing those things down as processes so that any person can plug in for a period of time and do the job. So generally speaking, what I'm trying to say is that we're moving towards gig work for everything, not just menial tasks like getting food from McDonald's or driving someone from A to B like Uber does. But I'm also talking about task work that can be handed out to lots of people. And now the trend in 2025 will be that executive level work will be more and more likely to be outsourced. And so it's going to be this phenomenon where, quite honestly, it's going to be really hard to find a full-time executive role, but it's going to be really easy to find clients who actually want you in an executive role. The other side of this is that you have a bunch of people who are sick and tired of the churn machine, and they're great leaders, they're great executives, they're great at what they do, but they're sick of the yo-yo return to office mandate stuff. They're tired of the, massive record quarterly profits and, we don't have any money for you you. I can't reach my wallet for a 5% raise. Sorry. Times are tough, even though they're not. It's all ridiculous. And I think everyone is just kind of starting to see through it. And so people who are tired of being on this merry-go-round carousel of bullshit reasons why companies continuously change the organization and, cut people and all, people are just tired of it. And I think that, like, quite honestly, we're just tired of emotionally investing into an organization that doesn't invest in us. So what do? You create your own organization, you be your own executive, and then you work fractionally for several companies. And that can look really great if you think about having 3, 4, 5 clients that you're serving, that you're supporting. And that means if one of them decides, hey, we don't need you anymore, well, you've got the rest of them to continue to pick up the slack. And so I am seeing for the first time, there is a massive shift that's coming where people are going to stop being full-time employees and they're going to start becoming fractional executives. And so even in our program, the Executive Career Accelerator, we now teach how to build your own business so that you can be a consultant. If you're laid off and you're in between jobs, you can do fractional work for someone until you find a full-time job. If you're looking for that executive experience, being a contractor doing executive level work is a great way to gain that experience without the risk of anything for the company or you. And I think that this is really the direction that leadership is going. You're going to see more and more fractional executives in the future. So those are my top 3 predictions for 2025. First of all, I think we're going to see a recession, if not a depression, coming from the instability in global trade. We're going to see AI eat the world in terms of not necessarily AI taking your job, but people who know how to use AI, this becoming a differentiator. And if you're not up to speed on AI in your department, you better get up to speed. And finally, I think because the risk reward profile of being a contractor is now about the same as the risk reward profile of being an employee, more people are actually going to go contractor. Gives you more freedom, flexibility. You control your own hours. You control your customers. You can fire your customers. You can choose who you work with. You can choose the times of days that you work. And it's just all this autonomy and flexibility that makes sense from the employee perspective, and from the employer perspective, they like it because they can cut you at a moment's notice if they need to change their spend. So those 3 changes are, I think, what's coming in 2025. And you need to learn how to be prepared for these changes. So if a recession does come, then you want to be ready for that. You want to have a network that's ready to help you find your next role. You might want to have a consulting business ready to go so that you can earn some income while you're in between jobs. All of those things are things that I would be prepared for. I would also be learning a lot about AI as I am right now. So if I were you, I would definitely be preparing myself for the changes that are coming in the market. And what that can look like is having a network that's really hot that helps you have opportunities should your full-time role disappear on you. And if you're trying to move upwards, looking at consulting could be a way to do this, which also gives you a little bit of freedom, latitude, flexibility, and a safety net in case that your full-time job goes away or the next full-time job takes longer to find. And I would also say, go learn AI, how AI applies to your industry, your role, your job specifically. That stuff's going to be really important to know, like learning the internet was 20 years ago. So those are the big changes that I see in the world in 2025. But what changes are you going to make for yourself in 2025? Where are you going? Ask yourself this question. I love this time of year for this. Go back a year from now and think about where you were at the end of 2023. Where were you in your job? Where were you in your career? Where were you in your self-development? Where were you in self-confidence and your financial stability? Where are you now? What has changed in 12 months? Now, let me ask you this. What can change in the next 12 months? Even if there's recessions and depressions and all, even if that stuff happens, there's always room for the best to move up. And that's what you need to be preparing yourself to be better than others so that you can move up even in times of difficulty. So ask yourself where you can be a year from now and what needs to change in order to be there a year from now. And like I said, we have a program that helps people take that next step in their career. If you want to learn more about that, check the link below. But also follow this channel and watch some of the other content that's coming out specifically around gearing up for 2025. And that's going to be a big focus of content for me going forward. So with that, I wish you a great 2025. I hope everyone is well. I hope that this is a new year. Yes, there's going to be some uncertainty. Yes, there's going to be difficult times, but it can also be a great year for us if we want it to be. So I hope you lean into that. I hope you have a great holiday season, and I'll see you in the next one.